Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Just a couple days ago, I recorded a podcast on Carson Wentz, and in that podcast, I talked about the first 4 years of his career. I mentioned what he does so well. I talked about the things I don't really like about his game, and I projected what he could possibly be based off of his excellent skill set. And towards the end of the podcast, I realized how many times the name Doug Pederson came out of my mouth. Doug Pederson this, Doug Pederson that. Which makes a lot of sense because in the NFL, and not just the NFL, in the game of football, the head coach has so much impact on the quarterback play. Look at Jeff Fisher with Jared Goff compared to Sean McVay with Jared Goff. Two totally different quarterbacks. And I do think that there is a difference in sports. When it comes to football, the head coach has such a big impact on the team and on the game compared to an NBA coach. I do believe that it is a totally different scenario based off of how much more the head coach in football does to the game. But getting back to my point, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, the two are always linked together. So it makes sense that when I am talking about Carson Wentz, Doug Pederson will be mentioned. But during that time, a light bulb went off. Sometimes that's a scary thing. Broads, what the hell are you thinking, you sick bastard? On other occasions, Broads, you're a genius. And this leans more towards the genius side. It's not the best thing I've ever thought of in my life. Let's not blow this out of proportion. But it leans towards, that's a good idea, Broads. Why not talk about Doug Pederson and Jim Schwartz? They've been here for 4 years, just like Carson Wentz. So with that being said, let's do that. Let's do it. Dougie P, his best attribute, leader of men. And that's so cliche and it's so standard, but that's because it's the truth. There is something to be said about how he carries himself through tough moments, how he has 50-plus men, and it's not just the players. I talk about the coaches underneath of him as well, how he rallies everybody together. It is moving, and he does it consistently. Every year to this point, the team buys in. They really do. They invest everything into what this man has to say. So that is very important. I think you can learn X's and O's. You can learn strategy. You can figure out certain formations. You can put players in certain spots to try out new looks. But there's an it factor when it comes to having a leadership quality. It's very similar to the quarterback position. And ironically enough, Dougie P was a quarterback in this league. Now, he was no Brett Favre. He was no Peyton Manning. He was a role player, which I think does factor into how well he has translated to a coach, because a lot of people claim a role player makes a better head coach than, say, the best to ever do it. And maybe that has something to do about the competitive fire or the competitive nature of being the best ever. Maybe it has something to do about the role-playing coach adapting as a teammate, and that relates to the leadership part as a head coach. You adapt as a teammate. You're more of a guy that, has a different, unique personality and a unique voice in the room, which translates to the success of Dougie P. But getting to my point about the it factor, when you're a quarterback in a pressured situation, certain guys can get it done, certain guys can't get it done, and you can't teach it. You are a leader in that huddle. Guys respect everything you say. Guys look up to you when you are speaking, and they expect you to deliver, and they trust that you will. Doug P has that it factor when it comes to the coach. People look up to him. They understand that in pressured moments, he will have everyone on the same page. And you can't teach that. So that is very valuable. Before we look into his 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 seasons and the record, I will say this, though. While there is respect that he does that he has the boys going late in the season, which is the most important time to play your best ball, you do need to criticize him for putting the team in that position. And that's a perfect segue into the records, because that kind of goes hand in hand with that. In 2016, he was a rookie head coach, and the Eagles went 7-9. Just like with athletes, there is a jump from high school to college. There is a jump from college to pros. They deserve time to grow. They deserve time to figure out how to play in this league, whether it's from a mental side of it, whether it's from a physical side of it. Pro athletes need to learn. Coaches need to do the same thing. Being a bench backup quarterback isn't the same as calling plays on the sidelines. He still needs to learn the game and experience certain situations with the headset and visor on. That's not the same as being on the sideline as a backup quarterback, watching your team go out there and play. When he was with Kansas City under Andy Reid, I find this part of his background interesting. We were informed he called plays. Do I think he technically called plays? Yeah, I think technically he might have called plays. And what I mean by that is, let's think about this. Would Doug Pederson allow Mike Groh to call plays? I would say absolutely not. So when Andy Reid allows, and I'm using air quotes, Doug Pederson to call plays, it's a technicality that, yeah, there were moments where he put the play call in. Because Andy Reid knows that here's a situation for Doug Pederson to maybe get hired from another squad, so this will be the best for him, so we can say, if we are asked, yes, absolutely, he did put in a play call. He did call plays in certain spots. And look what happened this past year with Bieniemy. Now, he deserves a head coaching job. That is a discussion that can totally fuel me up and make my blood boil all night long, really. The guy is a weapon when it comes to understanding the game of football and being a guy that has success surrounding his name. Bieniemy deserves a job. That's a totally different conversation. But when there was a clip last year of Bieniemy calling in a play, that's what Andy Reid does. It seems to be something that he does with his tree, and maybe that's a reason why his coaching tree has a lot more success than, say, a Bill Belichick. He gives them opportunities, very, very tiny opportunities, because at the end of the day, he's the one calling plays 98% of the time. That's his job. That's what you work for as a head coach. You call the plays. So it's great that he does this. I didn't put a lot of value in hearing, though, that Doug Pederson was calling all of these plays as the OC, because I know that that wasn't a high enough percentage to really hold any value. It still matters, though. It's still good that he at least got some sort of repetition, but it doesn't hold enough value because it wasn't enough. There's no way that any head coach who was an offensive guy is giving up his play calling that much to the point where the OC is calling plays constantly, week in and week out on Sundays. I'm not buying it. I am not buying it. So the rookie season, 7-9 for Doug P. Not the worst in the world. Following that, a Super Bowl run. Are you serious? The expectations, nowhere close to that. You're coming off of an under 500 season, and then boom, 13-3. We know the playoff run. We understand the Philly special. We know the aggressiveness. It was a miraculous season. Doug Pederson really stepped up, and he was tremendous. If you talk about the ceiling of Doug Pederson, it's that year. Everything was right. From Howie's perspective, everything was right. Jim Schwartz had a stellar season, and it gets overlooked because in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, the best quarterback to ever do it, torched him completely. But without that pass rush, without his defense, that team wasn't going anywhere. That defense was lethal. It was insane. And Jim Schwartz had a ton of impact on that Super Bowl run. He gets disrespected. He does. He gets disrespected. In 2018 and 2019, 9-7, 9-7. I love Doug P. I just want to make sure that's clear. I don't know if I love him as much as everybody else. There's an emotional tie. He brought us the Super Bowl. Doug P. brought us the Super Bowl. So that's very important. That's why there's such a big tie to Nick Foles, because he was the one to make it happen. Doug Pederson was the coach to finally have the Lombardi Trophy sitting in this city, and there was a huge parade. It was a fantastic moment. Doug Pederson has a skill set that can sustain success. If we are going to continue, though, say 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, let's look at the projection. If we are going to get 9-7, 9-7, 9-7, I don't know if I'm in for that. How many times have we been 4-6, 5-7, and then had to battle back late? Yes, there's something to be said about battling back late. You also can't just throw it in the trash that he is the one putting this team in the position to have to dig themselves out of the hole. That is part of this equation. It matters. Where I think Doug struggles, I don't think he's creative enough. And I think on his toes, he overthinks things and then it hurts the team. He overthinks the aggressiveness. He gets stupid with the aggressiveness. He has horrendous play calls. And no coach is completely great in every situation ever. There will be bad play calls. That's the nature of being a human being. Bill Belichick has bad play calls. Bill Belichick makes mistakes. Coaches will make mistakes. But Doug Pederson has a track record of really overthinking things. When he needs to make a decision on his toes, things don't go very well. There are times where he blows my mind with stupidity. I think he is a smart individual, I do, but in a football sense, at times, I don't. The fake field goal attempt, putting the ball in your kicker's hands to throw on 4th down last year, disgraceful. Wentz, and I'm saying this because I mentioned this a few times now, but I'm rewatching the Eagles season. There was a time where Wentz got hit, and he's holding his ribs. And I got nervous. I believe this was the Falcons game. I've grinded through so many games right now, so there's been a lot. It was either the Falcons game or the Lions game, but I'm pretty sure it was the Falcons. He's holding his ribs, right? And then you see Doug call a play where Carson Wentz is running the ball. It was an option, and he's running the football. And he dives, he slides, he gets hit. The dude was holding his ribs. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. Where's the logic? How many times have we seen a 3rd and short, and it's a toss to Darren Sproles that gets blown up for a loss? Sometimes the play design lacks creativity. I do feel it's important to point out the flaws. At this point in his career as a coach, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. No doubt about it. I don't want Doug Pederson fired. Just because I point out some flaws, it doesn't mean I'm claiming that this guy is the worst coach in the world. He's one of the better coaches in the league right now, and I'm nowhere near trying to say that this man deserves to be fired or whatnot. But I do think that 9-7, 9-7 in back-to-back years, which, let's be real, they made the playoffs in both of those seasons, but 9-7 probably won't get you into the postseason majority of the time. So think about how this conversation would change if they went 9-7, 9-7 in back-to-back years after winning a Super Bowl and not making the playoffs. It is a totally different conversation. I guarantee you that, because this year there were people who wanted him fired when the locker room went crazy, when Alshon Jeffrey news broke, when the Josina Anderson story went flying around. And I love how I just say the Alshon Jeffrey news as if it's definitely him, but at this point, we continue to say it definitely was him because it's just tied together. But anyway, I digress. If he didn't make the playoffs in these years with the same record that he did with the playoffs, It is not the same. And he probably would be on the hot seat entering this upcoming year if it even happens. I will not support what we've seen the last 2 years in the long run. I won't support it. I personally believe that that is not okay. I do not want bad football early, coming out slow, underachieving. Oh no, here comes the underdog masks, and here comes Doug Pederson rallying the troops. I value the rallying of the troops. I also value the slow starts, the bad creativity, not opening up the playbook enough and coming up with explosive plays. And players need to execute. Players need to execute. I am the biggest believer and supporter of the players have a bigger impact than coaches in all of sports. But in football, I think it is more head coach than any other league when it comes to head coach. Not more head coach than players. No, that's not what I mean. I mean it's the sport that has the most impact. Let's get this right here, bros. The sport where the head coach has the most impact is football. Jim Schwartz. There's so much hate for Schwartzy, and I was one of those people. I was one of those people that could not stand this guy. There's something to be said about his philosophy. There's something to be said about the way that he plays the game from a scheme standpoint. It works with the right personnel. It works when he has the right guys. Now, good coaching adjusts. And there are times where you don't have the right personnel. People get banged up. You're working with a bunch of garbage back there. Well, what do you do then? What do you do when adversity hits? And I think last year, Jim Schwartz did a tremendous job with Orlando Scandrick, with these guys that are bums off the street. You don't have players back there, and that's why this year, this upcoming year, will be so significant for him as long as people stay healthy, because you have a Darius Slay back there. You're working on your defensive tackle position and building up that line once again. He's starting to get more talent back in the secondary, so there's something to be said about that. His scheme, though, when he has a roster that works for his scheme, it's lethal. He knows what he's doing. He is a good football mind. The sticks defense, it bothers me too. Trust me, if there's one thing about his scheme that I would love to change, it's giving a different look than the sticks in certain moments. And I feel like he has adjusted to that. I feel like it was nowhere close to as pathetic as it was dating back a couple years prior to last season. I mean, I remember the overtime losses where, was it Corey Graham? And it was just disgusting and disturbing to see. All around, though, Jim Schwartz is a good D coordinator. Not a good head coach. His tenure as head coach wasn't smooth. As a D coordinator, I'm all about it. I think he's one of the best D coordinators in the NFL. He's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. He is the scapegoat. He is the guy that the fans go to the most and start freaking out and ripping apart, because that's the go-to guy. When in reality, as I just stated, talent matters. Players need to win the game, too. And when you have Orlando Scandrick, and you have Andrew Sandejo, and when you have these guys that are getting picked up off the streets, off waivers, come on. Like, you're going to blame the coach when you have guys who haven't even been in the league getting picked up out of nowhere because you're so banged up and nobody's healthy? You gotta factor that part into the conversation. When Jim Schwartz has talent, Jim Schwartz normally has a great season, and numbers might be flawed because this is a league where passing happens all the time. These quarterbacks throw for 4,000 yards. Sure, there might be a game where a team has 400 yards, but the Eagles win. And based off of his philosophy late in games, if the Eagles are up, he'll play deep and he'll allow teams to throw. I mean, just because numbers say 400-something yards, that to me doesn't mean everything, because there is context that has to be involved when having a discussion like this. I like Jim Schwartz. He has really grown on me. He was once my scapegoat. I totally despised him early in his tenure here in Philly, but I've completely switched, and I think he has done a pretty decent job for what he has been working with, and I'm excited to see him with legitimate talent on the roster once again, as long as they stay healthy. That's a big if. You need to be able to find guys who are able to be consistently on the field, and with no Malcolm Jenkins, I know Jalen Mills has talked about being that guy to step in and play that role. I wonder if things do change, though, because he's not Malcolm Jenkins. With all due respect, he's not. And not many people can bring to the table what Malcolm Jenkins did. Will he have to change up the way that this defense plays in certain situations based off of not having him here anymore? I really enjoy Doug Pederson's presence. I do. I think that there is something to be said about how he has this team together. Teams that are together, they're a family, they're one with each other. It matters, and it relates to how teams play on the field. Now, Alshon Jeffrey, that all happened last year. Yeah, that wasn't brotherhood. That wasn't a team, or that wasn't a moment in the season where the team was connected fully. And you could see that. You could see that with the play. You could see that throughout the tough times. Eventually, though, as Alshon Jeffrey got hurt and new guys came in, healthier guys, younger guys, hungrier players, and Greg Ward, Rob Davis, Josh Perkins. I can't believe these are the names I'm throwing out, but these are the guys. These are the players who stepped in, who were hungry, who made plays. You saw the culture change, and Doug was a big part of that. He made sure that these players were confident. He put these players in good positions to succeed, and it was entertaining. I just, for the long run, do not believe that I can sit through seasons like this. If you give me 2 more years of 9-7 football where they're 5-7 after a certain week in the season, or they're 4-7 in certain weeks of the season, and they battle back, this is going to run its course. This is going to run dry at some point. And if that is the case, I truly mean that. Is that what we are settling for? 9-7 and battling back after having a gross first half of the season every single year? No. We demand more. We expect more. We should have more. Now, once again, I'm not calling for Doug Pederson's head. That's a hypothetical. This, though, the last 2 years, it's not something that should be approved by you as the fan, by Howie Roseman, by Jeffrey Lurie. It should not be approved. And it does need to change. And I think it is possible to change. I think as this team, and you give credit to Howie, and you give credit to Doug as well, and a lot of the scouts, as this team starts this transition period of getting younger, getting new faces, targeting some free agents, acquiring great players like Darius Slay in trades, as they move on and they get a new look, I think that will change the 9-7 that we have been dealing with over the last 2 years. It was as if they won the Super Bowl. They thought they had a 3-year run. The expectations definitely got to them. The pressure, it was heavy. It didn't work. All right, let's reboot. Let's retool, and let's go from here. So this is sort of the new chapter with Dougie P, with a new team, with a new mindset, with a new look. Let's see how he goes from there. Also, real quick, the All-Decade team came out, and there's some Eagles on the All-Decade team. Darren Sproles, Fletcher Cox, Jason Peters, LeSean McCoy. So I just want to tip my cap to those guys. It's been a joy watching them compete for how many years now with the Eagles? A lot of years, and it's been super exciting. I saw the name LeSean McCoy, and I'm not going to lie. I thought, what could have been? What could have been? I processed Deshaun Jackson, who's talking about he's ready to prove himself again this year, which is a standard thing for a player to say after an injury, so I'm not going to put too much stock into it. But just thinking about him and LeSean McCoy and the excitement and the game in the snow, and oh, he was so much fun to watch. The only thing I didn't like is the way he held the football, right? I mean, come on, the way he's holding the ball with one hand, going all crazy, and it's so unorthodox, and you just think every time someone's going to swat it out of his hands, but he was so fast and he was juking everybody that no one could actually get it. Oh, Shady, oh, the snow game. Oh, it was so great. I truly miss him. And it's wild to think. It's not wild because of the nature of the position, but it's weird and odd to see him being essentially a healthy scratch for a Super Bowl game for Andy Reid. I mean, that's just where his career is at right now. But during the prime of it, whew, it was special. And I loved every single minute of it. If I can go back in time. Well, hold on. See, now I'm just, every time I'm saying something, I'm like, wait a second, hold on a second. I always debate myself. I don't know if I would go back in time because I believe the Eagles won the Super Bowl based off of all the moves Chip Kelly made. I was going to say, I wish none of that ever happened. If I could go back in time, I would change Chip Kelly. I would change the whole process of getting rid of all these players, Deshaun, Shady. But as brutal as it was, as upsetting as it was, that part of the Eagles franchise has led to the Super Bowl championship, Doug Pederson, and what they have accomplished so far to this point. So I don't know if I would go back and change anything. My whole point of that, though, is I just miss LeSean McCoy. And it's not like I don't miss Jason Peters throughout his prime. Jason Peters in his prime, one of the best left tackles ever. Fletcher Cox in his prime. Whoa, are you serious? You're starting to see a little bit of a downfall. He picked it up last season. I feel he was maybe injured throughout the beginning part, and he was playing super banged up. Not that he gets much healthier as the weeks go on, because these guys put on a brutal beatdown week in and week out, but he found himself. He got himself into a groove later in the year. He's not what he once was, though, and he was special. And Sproles, come on, the yards say it all. It was just a fun time to see all of these players compete. So, with that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts on Doug P., Jim Schwartz, and the All-Decade team. Why the hell not? If you're on YouTube, please comment down below, subscribe, and hit that thumbs up button. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcasting platform, leave a review and a 5-star rating. In the review, you can comment. You can talk and communicate with me about these topics. I read them all, so I would appreciate that 100%. So thank you. Thank you all for the support throughout this time. I'm doing my best to throw out content as much as possible. I'm putting up the Processed, which is the 76ers podcast I'm doing with Daryl Reynolds of Villanova, national champion. I'm putting that on YouTube as well as the podcasting platform for that individual podcast. Make sure you follow that Twitter account at Processed 76ers. There's so many giveaways involved and highlights with the players. It's a really cool Twitter account to go follow. And I'm also putting up the Powder Blue, the Phillies podcast that I do on YouTube as well. I figured at this point, no content is bad content when it comes to sports. And I do all these podcasts. Why not record the visual of it and put it up on the YouTube channel? It can't hurt. And as much sports content that I can put out at the moment, I'm here for it. So why the hell not? Thank you guys so much once again, and I will see you next time.